In 1956, a newborn baby was hired just hours after being born. His father was Charlton Heston, and the director put him in a basket that started sinking on camera. Heston dove in and nearly electrocuted himself, saving his own son. But that wasn't the wildest moment on set. There was real pig's blood rotting under the sun, a heart attack on a 130-foot ladder, and an orgy scene so out of control they had to bring in guards. The truth about what happened during filming stayed hidden for decades until now. Cecil B. DeMille's 1956 epic was known for its ambition, but what went on behind the scenes was just as wild as what made it on screen. For the hail plague scene, they couldn't use real ice. It would have seriously hurt the 3,000 extras. So they painted 50 pounds of popcorn silver and dropped it from 30 feet in the air. It worked until take 7, when stuntman Eddie Parker inhaled a popcorn kernel mid-scene and started choking, while hundreds of extras kept panicking like nothing was wrong. DeMille didn't yell "cut" for a full 45 seconds. Later, Parker joked he almost died from fake divine wrath. After that, they switched to softer styrofoam pellets, which added another $2,800 to the film's already massive $13.5 million budget. Then there was the locust disaster. They paid $0.15 each for 2,000 grasshoppers and had them shipped in for the swarm scene. But the insects escaped across the desert set near Guadalupe, California. 47 crew members chased them for 6 hours with butterfly nets under the blazing sun, but only 800 were recovered. The rest got eaten by birds. The whole mess delayed filming by a day and cost Paramount $200 in overtime. DeMille was so fed up, he considered using animated bugs instead, but settled for a mix of rubber ones and camera tricks. That day became known among the crew as the moment Moses lost control of nature. Things didn't get any smoother during the frog plague. Ann Baxter, who played Nefertiti, had a deep fear of frogs, so naturally they used 300 rubber ones on nearly invisible wires to simulate the invasion. But one extra smuggled in his pet bullfrog as a joke. During a close-up shot, it jumped right into Baxter's lap. She screamed so loud that DeMille thought it was brilliant acting until they realized it was pure terror. It ruined 3 takes. The frog, later nicknamed Moses Jr., was returned to the prankster extra, who lost $25 from his $40 daily wage. When it came time to shoot the river turning to blood, things got even messier. The original plan was simple: dump red dye into real Nile water hauled to set. But a sandstorm ruined everything, turning the mix into brown sludge. So they bought 200 gallons of real pig's blood from a slaughterhouse for $150. It looked great on camera, but within hours it attracted swarms of flies. The blood began to rot under the 95-degree heat, and the stench was unbearable. Charlton Heston said it felt like a biblical punishment. They had to shoot in 30-minute shifts, and the makeup team went through 40 pounds of powder just covering fly bites. After 3 days, they had to abandon the set and rebuild somewhere else, spending another $12,000. And then came the smoke, literally. For the darkness plague, they used military-grade smoke grenades that filled the palace set with thick black fog. Yul Brynner, playing Pharaoh, got disoriented and wandered the set for 20 minutes before slamming into a golden chariot worth $3,500. No one could see him, and DeMille's voice didn't carry through the smoke. Brynner ended up with a nasty bruise and a bruised ego, but the footage of him stumbling actually looked so real, they kept it in the final cut. After that, safety rules changed, and they added ropes and emergency lights for all future smoke scenes. Before filming even began, DeMille was already planning something legendary. He needed a newborn to play baby Moses, and couldn't find one that matched the biblical age perfectly. On February 12, 1955, Charlton Heston's son Fraser was born at 3:47 a.m. Hours later, DeMille sent him a telegram: "Congratulations on your son. He's hired." Fraser was just a few hours old and already had a job. DeMille moved his nursery to the studio and scheduled feedings around shoots. He even had a tiny director's chair made for him. Fraser earned $500 a day and was a 6-month-old millionaire. But filming the Nile scene nearly ended in disaster. On July 18, 1955, they placed baby Fraser in a waterproofed basket for a dramatic float across the water tank. The sealant failed under the heat, and the basket began to sink. Fraser started crying and drifted toward the deep end. Charlton Heston dove in fully dressed, ruining a $2,000 costume and nearly electrocuting himself because of underwater lights. He ignored the on-set nurse yelling not to touch the baby with wet hands and scooped up his son mid-cry. The rescue took 47 seconds and was caught by Life magazine photographers. It became one of Hollywood's most famous behind-the-scenes moments. Directing a baby turned out to be harder than any actor DeMille had ever worked with. He created tiny 2-inch-wide script pages and whispered things like, "Look prophetic," to a 3-month-old who couldn't even sit up. He spent $200 on a baby-sized megaphone and hired child psychologists to analyze Fraser's performance. But the baby only responded to his dad's voice, so Charlton had to hide behind cameras and sing Hebrew lullabies just to keep him calm. For one scene, they shot 847 feet of film for just 23 seconds of usable footage. DeMille later said Charlton was easy to direct, but Fraser required divine help. The basket itself was another nightmare. They tried to make it historically accurate using Nile papyrus and 2,000-year-old techniques, but during rehearsal on July 15, 1955, the basket couldn't handle Fraser's weight and split in half, dumping him in shallow water. The entire crew froze. DeMille halted production for 6 hours while the prop was reinforced with steel mesh and aircraft glue. That cost another $8,500 and delayed everything by 2 days. The final basket was so buoyant they had to weigh it down with lead strips to stop it from floating too much on camera. Then came the prophetic gurgle. During the discovery scene, baby Fraser made a strange sound that DeMille called divine. The sound team added echo, temple bells, and angelic choirs to make it magical. But in a 1998 interview, Fraser revealed the truth. It was just him spitting up formula milk after his bottle. It happened 23 minutes after his 2 p.m. feeding, which became his regular performance schedule. DeMille never found out the enhanced sound won a technical Oscar. Yul Brynner, who played Pharaoh, was just as intense. After seeing Charlton Heston's muscular build, he started lifting 200-pound weights every morning and eating 6 raw eggs a day. His arms looked so veiny on camera, they had to adjust the lighting. No one expected the lean Broadway star to transform into such a strong screen presence. And Brynner didn't stop there. On April 22nd, 1956, he wrapped a Broadway performance at night, flew to California at dawn, filmed for 12 straight hours in 110-degree heat, and flew back for another stage show, all in less than 48 hours. He once even improvised the now famous line, "Let the name of Moses be stricken from every book and tablet," out of pure frustration after arguing with DeMille. It wasn't in the script, but DeMille loved it so much they used it as is. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. On May 18, 1956, a new scalp lotion gave Brynner a terrible allergic reaction. They covered the rash with gold dust makeup, but under the sun, his head sparkled like a disco ball. The footage looked ridiculous, and they had to reshoot everything, costing another $50,000. He later joked he looked like King Tut's lamp. His wildest moment came during the chariot chase. Brynner refused a stunt double and had never driven a chariot before. On June 5, 1956, during one fast take, he turned too hard and flipped the entire thing. Sand flew everywhere, and he got buried in it. It took 4 hours to clean him up, and they had to use industrial fans to get sand out of his costume and hair. Surprisingly, the footage made it into the final film, and Brynner was banned from doing any more chariot stunts alone. Cecil B. DeMille wanted the Red Sea to part like a miracle, but what he got was a slow, expensive meltdown. The walls weren't CGI. They were made from 15-foot slabs of blue jello sitting inside huge water tanks. But under hot Technicolor lights, the gelatin melted faster than the crew could even start filming. For 6 months straight, the crew rebuilt those jello walls 50 separate times, each try costing thousands. Refrigeration units didn't help. Shooting at dawn didn't help. Nothing worked. Catering staff had to remove all gelatin desserts from the menu because the crew couldn't bear to look at another wobbling cube. In the end, the only trick that worked was filming the walls collapsing in reverse and playing it backward to make them look like they were parting. DeMille wanted water to crash through those walls, so he ordered 360,000 gallons to be dumped from Paramount's overhead tanks. What happened next was biblical in the worst way. The water flooded the stage so so badly that extras had to swim through the set, which was supposed to be dry land. 3 of them nearly drowned, and one later sued the studio after claiming he got pneumonia. The water pressure destroyed the Jell-O setup again and again, forcing the crew to shoot the flood 17 times. Extras were stuck in wet robes between takes, shivering and standing ankle-deep in a gritty soup of water, gelatin, and sand. DeMille wasn't just a perfectionist. He became obsessed. He tested Jell-O mixes in his office using 2 pencils to part a bowl of gelatin and declared it God's own recipe. But that confidence didn't last. When they scaled it up, the gelatin walls wobbled so hard it looked like an earthquake. Someone suggested glycerin to stabilize the mixture. It worked, but made the floor dangerously slippery. The director insisted on tasting every batch himself. He'd reject them for being too earthly or lacking divine consistency. His assistant started taking notes, turning DeMille's picky habits into what the crew called the sacred Jell-O scriptures. Meanwhile, flies were everywhere, drawn to the sugary walls like a curse from Exodus. And then came the extras. 8,000 of them. Herding that many people through a sticky, slippery set was chaos. Wind machines blew sand into the Jell-O walls, turning them into something like frosted sludge. The grit stuck to costumes, hair, and skin. It was impossible to clean. Makeup crews worked non-stop to scrub gelatin and sand from the beards of frustrated actors. People kept slipping and falling, but DeMille didn't care. He said the chaos made it feel more real. One day, a stagehand sneezed, just one sneeze. But the vibration from that sneeze made the Jell-O wall collapse on cue before the cameras could even roll. An entire day's shoot was ruined. DeMille snapped. He banned sneezing. Seriously. Guards handed out handkerchiefs like sacred relics. One assistant's only job was watching for people about to sneeze so they could be kicked off set. The handkerchiefs became collector's items. It got so absurd, some people thought they were living inside a biblical comedy. On March 18, 1955, DeMille was 73 and halfway up a 130-foot ladder to fix a stuck VistaVision camera. He was wearing riding boots. Halfway up, he had a heart attack. He froze there for 10 minutes, gripping the ladder, sweating, clinging for life. 3 crew members had to rappel up and rescue him. When they got him down, his first question was whether they got the shot. They had, but the footage was ordered destroyed to avoid studio backlash. 2 days later, he was back on set in a wheelchair with oxygen tanks. He directed the rest of the film that way, whispering into a throat mic. Extras said the commands felt like the voice of Moses, echoing from nowhere. The wheelchair had special sand treads. He called his oxygen tank God's Special Effects. On April 12th, DeMille was standing just 12 feet away from the burning bush, yelling, "More divine awe, Moses!" when a gust of wind blew the flames onto his sleeve. His arm caught fire. A grip tackled him into the sand. DeMille refused treatment. He wrapped it in a wet cloth and went right back to directing. The megaphone he used got scorched, but survived. He kept it as a souvenir. Then there was the stone tablet incident. On May 8th, while inspecting freshly carved granite commandments, a sudden rainstorm hit. DeMille slipped on wet sand, twisted his ankle, and fractured it. For the rest of production, he limped around using a walking stick made from a leftover 10 Commandments staff prop. He could have taken time off. He didn't. May 23rd, the final day of shooting. DeMille insisted on personally checking 47 magnesium flares that would simulate the pillar of fire. Flare number 33 misfired. Sparks flew straight into his face, burning off both his eyebrows. Instead of panicking, he joked, "Even God needs a retake." They had to draw fake eyebrows on him for the wrap photo. The misfire looked so epic on camera, he insisted they recreate it for the final cut. During the Golden Calf orgy scene, 500 extras got so carried away, it turned into something more like a nightclub than a biblical exodus. People were making out on camera. DeMille halted the shoot, handed out modesty robes, and added guards. It still took 3 weeks to film, costing $75,000 just for extras. Charlton Heston later said one actress screamed, "Who do I have to fucking to get out of this movie?" DeMille claimed it was an orgy kids can watch, but behind the scenes, it was chaos. One extra tried to steal steal a wooden staff. He didn't know it had a hidden mic inside, Heston's prop for recording dialogue. A massive search tracked the stolen audio to the thief's dressing room. He was fined $200 and kicked off the set, but the crew joked it was the most expensive lunch break in Hollywood. During the same orgy shoot, DeMille called out a young woman for not paying attention. She clapped back, saying she was just wondering when that bald-headed old fart would call lunch. Everyone froze. DeMille paused, then lifted his megaphone and shouted, "Lunch!" He fined her $50 but kept her on because he admired her guts. Edward G. Robinson, playing Dathan, kept sneaking cigarettes during 110-degree desert shoots. One day, he flicked a butt into a prop tent. The whole thing caught fire because of the flammable dye. Crew had to put it out using Nile River water, brought in for drinking. That fire nearly destroyed $15,000 worth of sets. DeMille banned smoking after that. Robinson joked later that his habit cost more than his character's betrayal. And finally, Vincent Price's costume started bleeding. The dyes used were authentic ancient Egyptian pigments. Under hot lights, the red dye melted, mixing with sweat. During his death scene, it looked like he was actually bleeding. DeMille loved it. They kept it in the final cut, but the costume had to be re-dyed every day. It cost $500 just to keep it from turning pink. Before Herb Alpert became famous with his Tijuana brass band, he was just a 21-year-old USC student with a trumpet dream. But in 1956, long before his first big hit, he picked up drumsticks instead and played as a Hebrew slave drummer in the Ten Commandments. His hands blistered from the intense scenes filmed around Mount Sinai. DeMille didn't even credit him, but he kept the footage because it looked real and raw. That same year, Carl Alfalfa Switzer from our gang also showed up on set, this time as a brick-hauling slave. Nobody knew it would be his last film. He died just 3 years later, shot in a fight over a $50 hunting dog fee, killed by a man named Moses, strangely enough. And even more bizarre, Switzer died the same day as DeMille, but only the director made headlines. Around that same time, whispers say a young Martin Luther King Jr. quietly watched the filming in Egypt. He wasn't famous yet, just a 25-year-old finishing his doctorate. But when he saw the massive scenes about freedom and deliverance, it left an impression. Some believe those visuals echoed through his early sermons, though no photos prove he was ever there. Actress Barbara Rush nearly played Moses' wife, but DeMille gave the role to Yvonne DiCarlo. Rush had tested for it, just like a long list of big names, but her footage may have ended up as background filler. Then there was Audrey Hepburn. DeMille wanted her as the seductive Nefertiti, even had her photos all over his office. But in the end, he decided she was too slim for the revealing gowns. The part went to Anne Baxter, who had the curves and the power DeMille thought the role needed. DeMille himself was a force to be reckoned with. At 73, he climbed a 107-foot ladder to fix a camera, had a heart attack at the top, and nearly fell. Doctors said he'd die if he kept working. 2 days later, he was back on set, defying death just to finish his masterpiece. That same set housed thousands. DeMille built a full-blown tent city in the desert called Camp DeMille. Bugles woke people up, horses dragged equipment through sand, and camels were borrowed to sneak out to speakeasies. The production spent $13 million, about $120 million today. They shipped 15,000 animals to Egypt, fed 14,000 extras, and filmed next to the real pyramids. For one hailstorm scene, they even used white spray-painted popcorn. The golden calf used in the orgy scene wasn't just a prop. It was a massive gold-painted beast with snakes and zigzags. And later, it went on tour with the Smithsonian. Even the tech pushed boundaries. VistaVision cameras were custom-built for this film. They were powerful, expensive, and incredibly fussy. One camera sold for $65,000 decades later. But on set, desert sand constantly jammed them. When the thunder of Mount Sinai needed a voice, the team used elephant roars slowed down and blended with Charlton Heston's voice. It was so powerful that it shattered a prop tablet with real Hebrew text. They called it breaking the laws. Literally, there were secrets everywhere. Charlton Heston was the voice of God at the burning bush, but DeMille kept it secret from the whole crew. He slowed Heston's voice and layered it with echo so even Heston couldn't recognize it at first. Later, People believed someone else voiced God on Mount Sinai, but BYU archives proved it was Delos Jukes, a choir soloist whose voice was slowed 14% to create the holy sound. Even the effects misbehaved. During one pillar of fire scene, wind shifted the flames and sent fire chasing a terrified extra who tripped and sprained his ankle. He told everyone he was punished by God for not taking the role seriously. Ann Baxter had her own mishap. Her jewelry hid tiny microphones to record her soft lines. One day, the system screeched mid-take and she broke into laughter, joking that even gods glitch. The line was cut, but the legend stayed. Cliff Burton was just a teenager in 1983 when he invited his Metallica bandmates over to his place in Castro Valley to watch the 10 Commandments. As they sat through the epic, one scene stood out, the moment when the angel of death swept through Egypt. A fog rolled across the screen, slow and heavy, and Cliff suddenly blurted out, "Creeping death." No one laughed. They all knew right away it was something special. That phrase stuck. James Hetfield later wrote the lyrics, inspired by the same biblical plague, focusing on the death of the Egyptian firstborns. When they released Creeping Death on their 1984 album Ride the Lightning, it didn't just become a song, it became an anthem. The live crowds erupted at the "Die, Die, Die" chant. It reached number 38 on the mainstream rock charts, and to this day, it remains one of Metallica's most powerful live moments. All of it from a movie night at Cliff's house. A few decades earlier, the man behind that very movie, Cecil B. DeMille, had another idea that went far beyond cinema. He teamed up with the Fraternal Order of Eagles to carve massive 4,000-pound granite monuments of the 10 Commandments and install them in public places. It wasn't just about religion, it was also marketing for his 1956 epic. One of those monuments was placed at the Texas state capitol, and decades later, it became the center of a major Supreme Court case. A lawyer named Thomas Van Orden argued that the monument violated the separation of church and state. Things got wild when satanic groups jumped in, demanding they be allowed to install their own statues if the Christian one stayed. The court ruled 5-4 that the monument could remain. They said it was about history, not just religion. Today, over 150 of those granite slabs still stand across America. The one in Texas is 6 feet tall, 3 feet wide, and weighs as much as a small car. It's not subtle, and that's exactly how DeMille planned it. By the time 1999 rolled around, the 10 Commandments had become a yearly Easter tradition for millions of families. Ever since 1973, ABC had been airing it during Holy Week, and people had built entire family routines around it. But that year, the network made a decision they'd instantly regret. They decided not to air it. Within hours, over 10,000 people called ABC in outrage. Letters poured in, parents, grandparents, kids. They all wanted to know why Moses wasn't coming home this Easter. The backlash was so intense, it became national news. ABC quickly reversed the decision and brought the movie back the next year. Since then, they've never skipped it again. They learned the hard way that some traditions, even ones born on television, run deeper than they imagined. But the legacy of the 10 Commandments doesn't just live on through songs, monuments, or annual broadcasts. It also lies buried, literally. Back in 1923, when DeMille filmed the original silent version of the movie in California's Guadalupe Dunes, he built massive Egyptian sets, towering pharaoh statues, enormous sphinx heads, all of it. When filming wrapped, he didn't dismantle it, he buried it. For nearly a century, the sand kept his secret. Then, in 2017, archaeologists and film historians began digging. What they found was surreal. Among the artifacts was a prop human skull, perfectly preserved. Inside the hollow skull was a note, Cecil B. DeMille's 10 Commandments, buried 1956. The date was wrong. 1956 was the remake, but the find was still extraordinary. It became one of the strangest and most iconic archaeological movie discoveries ever. Today, those props are displayed in museums, proving that sometimes Hollywood history waits in silence under the sand. And if you thought that was the end, there's one more piece of this story you wouldn't believe. DeMille's 1956 production required a script so massive it stretched across 308 pages with over 1,200 hand-drawn sketches for sets, costumes, and effects. The script alone cost $50,000 back then, almost $500,000 today, and weighed more than 15 pounds. DeMille, always obsessive and protective, ordered all copies destroyed after filming. He even burned the original himself in a studio bonfire. But fire doesn't always get everything. One page, partially burned, was secretly saved by someone on set. It stayed hidden for decades. In 2010, it resurfaced at a Sotheby's auction. They called it Moses' Lost Commandment. Bidders fought for it, and in the end, it sold for exactly $50,000, the same price it originally cost to print the entire thing. One page, half burned, turned into one of the most expensive script pages ever sold.